Hi there, I'm Phil the Practical Gardener. I'm having to film this quite early in the day because we're having a lot of trouble with wind here, and even now the wind is blowing the tree that I'm about to film quite strongly. I have got a series of tips regarding the growing of trees, the selection of the right one, the planting of them, so be sure to subscribe to my channel and also to like this video so that you can be sure to see these tips as they become available. Also look at my website, which is linked below, so that you can look at under resources at the schedule of tips as they become available and the ones that will be upcoming. A shade tree is a wonderful form of shading to have in a patio area such as this, or a children's play area, for example. I do have other forms of shading here. I have a large beach umbrella, and I also have verandas on my different buildings, but they're not the same form of shade. Tree casts a beautiful dappled shade, particularly if it is well pruned, and also one that actually adds a more cooling effect because of the transpiration that the tree does. I do recommend that you purchase a tree that has a natural umbrella shape, preferably one that is native to your area. If I have purchased a jacaranda tree, which isn't native to here at all, but you can talk to your local nursery about one that would be suitable to your particular situation. When I purchased the jacaranda tree, I made sure that I had one that had a single straight rod going up because I didn't want a multi-stemmed one. I've got friends not far from here, they've got a tree which has been allowed to branch from low near the ground, and consequently you would not be able to sit under it. It doesn't matter where they've got it because it's by their front boundary. And also when you look at it, it's been allowed to grow very large, far too large for most small patio areas or courtyards as I've got here. So when I bought it, I planted it and I've actually removed all of the side shoots that were growing up and down it, and I just left the central leader going up because I didn't want those side shoots. And as a consequence, there was a danger of the tree not building up strength because those side branches would have helped the trunk to build up its diameter and its strength. So I had to stake it, and normally you can put a stake a bit of a distance apart on each side and tie it as low as possible and quite loosely because you do want the tree to sway. That's how it builds up its strength. You can see this one here even now is swaying quite a bit, even though it's a fairly large tree. It's about 10 years old, by the way. I'm more or less growing it almost like a bonsai if you think about it that way. In this particular case, I actually put these 4 steel rods in the ground, and I put these wires, and the reason was because one of my cats is a terrible tree scratcher. Now you can see that there is a tree over there which is a Dracaena tree, which is a monocotyledonous tree, and there would not be a problem if you scratched it because the vascular tubes that run up and down the trunk are internal in the trunk, so the scratching won't have any terrible effect, or usually it won't. I also have a ponytail palm on my courtyard which the cat scratches all the time and has never done the slightest harm to it. But this is a dicotyledonous tree, as most trees in fact are, and consequently the vascular system is around the outside of the tree, and if the cat was to scratch it too much it would ring bark it, which would kill it. So that's why they're a slightly unusual way of doing it. It's actually the only dicotyledonous tree that I've got in this area. So I did have this tied loosely, and you can see partly because the rods themselves would move that the tree could actually move quite a lot and build up its strength. So once the tree got to about 1.8 meters, I then trimmed that off. You'll see I have actually got an air plant or tillandsia growing here. That's just for ornamentation, so don't worry about this. It's just perched in there. It's an epiphytic plant. It's not doing any harm to the tree. And as the side branches grew long, I trimmed them back. Earlier on they were very vigorous and they would grow about up to say 1 meter or 3 feet long. I would trim them back to about 1/3 of that length, but there were still leaves in that area because that's a stem that had grown in that current season. I would trim that back and that would encourage it to branch, and that's what's led to this compact structure to the tree that you see now. And that sort of pruning is called a heading cut, where you cut a branch back and encourages it to branch at various points. So these are the result of heading cuts that I've done on different aspects of the tree. Now, as a consequence of the pruning that I've done to the tree, I've actually taken a lot of vigor out of the tree. And that can be a good idea because if the tree grows too big, it's going to cast excessive shading, it's going to block your guttering, and also the roots would actually push up the pavings, even the large ones that I have here. I do have a large native tree behind the camera, effortlessly pushed up the pavers near it. It's not one that I could actually prune back, it would kill the tree. It's not causing a tripping hazard where it is, so I just put up with it. Most of the cuts I do now are what are called thinning cuts. So for example here, this is now grown too large, and so today I'm going to prune this probably to there, and I'll show these cuts. That will greatly reduce the size of the tree. And I will be cutting it to these weaker side branches, and these are low, and you can see they're still above my head. They are not very vigorous, these ones here, and so that will take a lot of the vigor out of the tree. And by pruning it to that point, I won't be encouraging a lot of regrowths. I might need to do it several times through the season. I've put off pruning this tree because we actually had a small wedding in this courtyard a couple of days ago, and in about 5 weeks we have another function here. So I would like the tree to regrow modestly and look attractive again then. You can see that as a result of my pruning, it does produce wonderful luxuriant foliage, so it is a very, very successful method. So those are the two types of cuts, the heading cut and the thinning cut. And as a result of doing this, I keep the tree down to a height of 2.4 meters, which is 8 feet. And that means that it is manageable by myself. Just by standing on a small step ladder, I only have a small 2-step one. You don't want to get much higher because it would be dangerous. If the tree is allowed to go much higher, you may want to get an arborist in, and an arborist would be able to reduce it down in size. Normally you wouldn't take any more than about 1/3 of the tree off at any one time, because that would be damaging to it. If the tree had grown much beyond that, you're probably better to remove it and simply plant another tree in its place, but that would be a bit of a pity. You can see that as a result of the heading and thinning cuts, and also the way that I've trained the tree overall, that it's got a very attractive umbrella shape, casts wonderful shade for people who are wanting to sit in this area, and it adds to the overall ambience of my courtyard area, which is the keynote part of my garden. So I hope you've got some useful ideas out of this particular tip, and I thank you for watching this through to the end. Bye for now.